Welcome back to 8 Cubes, the show where we talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap. I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series. We switched the one pair of glasses that we own this episode. They're on him this week. We are going to start with Fantomex, a 4/6 with an activate. So first things first, 4-cost activate. Bad space to be in. That has a very unique trigger effect. If you have discarded a card and one of your cards has been destroyed, afflict all front row enemies with -2 power. That is up to a total of 12 power that this card provides on the activate. So effectively, this is a 4/18, but in downside, it is not only a 4-cost activate, it is a 4-cost activate with further requirements. Now, those requirements are not the most strenuous thing to actually hit, depending on what you do. My instinct is that what you're doing is you're putting this card in a deck that is playing Hood Misery and playing Gambit, and then ordering it such that your final turn is Gambit to get your discard in, and your destroy comes from Hood Misery earlier in the game. That seems like the only actual good thing you can do with this card. It might not be, but I can't think of other good ways. Once you start playing things like Carnage or Blade, I just feel like you've lost the plot.
Yeah, so doing Carnage or Blade stuff is just basically you're forcing this into a deck, right? Because currently there's not a deck that kind of fits both together. But obviously at the same time, 4/18, as you mentioned, is super enticing. It's just that like even in that whole scenario with the whole misery thing, it's like is the deck able to fit that? You know, like, the deck is already such a tight space. You know, is it able to fit sometimes 4/18, which is also at the end of the day you need to remember that it's subject to how many cards your opponent plays as well, right? Because at the same time, some decks just don't play that many cards. So it's also very dependent on your opponent. And it also has unique trigger like conditions. So it's actually a very situational card. I think looking at it as a 4/18 on average is kind of difficult, even in the right deck. Like even in the right deck, maybe it's a 4/14, 4/16. You kind of have to draw everything in the right order as well. So very conditional card, very high power card when it works, but it's also a very, very conditional card.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the right way to build this is you have a bunch of things that do one of them, and then like
Mhm.
one thing that does the other one. So like you put this in a discard deck with one ability to destroy something, or you put this in a destroy deck
Mhm.
and play Gambit in your destroy deck or whatever, right? Like that feels like the direction you'd want to go with this when it comes down to it. But my best guess is some sort of like mid-rangey misery deck that just happens to run Gambit and happens to run this. And it's also possible, like the other thing that comes to mind is like this card is a card that you can use like Prodigy type things with. But I think the
Mm.
difference between this and Invisible Woman is the price tag on it. Is if you're prodigying this, you better be damn sure you're getting a destroy and a discard. And you better be doing that while using your turn 4 on this and your turn 5 on Prodigy. So I don't know how confident I am in deck building to do that. I expect the output to be powerful, but the consistency to not be there. As a 4-cost activate, this card has a natural enemy that is, of course, Cosmic Ghost Rider. There's a lot pushing against this card, but I do feel like some kind of Gambit misery type of deck could probably make it work. I think, a few months ago when that kind of stuff was way more functional, this could have been a much better card. As is, it's like, this maybe should have been a 4/7 just to make sure that when you're not getting everything out of it, you're not playing something that is literally worse than the vanilla thing.
Okay, so I want to throw one more like thought into you guys' head and your head as well, because I've always thought about this about Gambit specifically, right? This is not so much about Fantomex, more about like just Gambit. If you think about it, Gambit's actually quite a splashable card. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine just playing a Gambit on your final turn? Because
Yep.
it's turn 6, right? Like, you don't really
It's
care
just
about
good.
what's left in your hand because there's no further turn, right? So
Yep.
why not just play a guy that can randomly blow up the biggest or some big thing on your opponent's board because you don't really care what happens with the rest of your hand, right? So I always thought that Gambit was something that could be splashed in more places than it currently is, which is not many places.
I would imagine that if this card has one metagame impact, it will be a lot of people splashing a Gambit. Because
Hmm.
when you think about like what are good ways to make this card work, Gambit's kind of the only one where it's like, oh, I really want the thing that he's doing. I would like to be discarding my card for this. And because of the way ordering works with an activate, I can just have the Gambit go before the activate. And so it's totally fine. Like it just works. That's like the number one thing that sticks out to me is like Gambit and
Someone
Hood
make a
Misery, and everything
successful
else is
Gambit
just like
splash deck, man. I just love the fact that it's not meant to be a discard only card. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be. I feel like it's one of those cards that could be just a turn 6 game ender in so many decks.
it had a much better chance to do that when you could pair it with a Juggernaut or Negasonic. Like a lot of Gambit mid-range, so to speak, was like when those cards cost 3. On to Aurora, who I guess this is how I'll do my review of Aurora. I'll say this card is aimed squarely at lovers of mid-range piles. If you are someone who likes playing a pile of good cards that has no synergy with each other whatsoever, Aurora sort of backdoors synergy into your deck by saying all your synergy list cards, you actually were doing a synergy thing, even though you were playing the same other 11 cards anyway. Like you were already doing like whatever sort of copycat Shadow King Shang-Chi BS. That's what Aurora is for. Now, I think that that's a cool space for them to play around in. Obviously, it's a card I enjoy pretty heavily. I like this card, but it is a bit like they made a card specifically for me. The biggest problem Aurora has is that in the context of this card being a mid-range points package, right? It's got to compete with other sort of mid-range points packages, and the biggest competition it has is Werewolf Merlin, and I don't think it's better than Werewolf Merlin.
Yeah, so the thing about this card is last week we thought that it was a Thanos only card, which I actually did
Yeah,
really
we
think
were
it was
wrong about that.
Yeah, we were super wrong, right? Like turns out playing it in a normal mid-range deck that has a way higher chance of actually drawing the Aurora was better. And I mean, some of these mid-range piles, like you said, random BS piles, they just have a natural amount of like a good enough mix of like on reviews, ongoings, activates, whatsoever. Like some people purposefully run like the one drops that benefit from Aurora, obviously, which makes sense. But I think this card, I still rate this card quite highly because you just turn every random pile of whatever into like way more stats, right? Just Aurora on the final turn buffs basically almost everything in your deck. Whether it's the max amount of buffs or not, it's quite a significant amount of stats. So I'm a big fan of the card. I obviously didn't think about it too much outside of the Thanos scenario because I guess the Thanos scenario was the easy way of doing it. But then obviously, then again, Thanos suffers from a lot of things right now:
Well,
natural inconsistencies, Killmonger, blah blah. But
yes, but what I also will say is like, were we wrong? We thought it wouldn't make it into mid-range decks because other stuff was better. And that's still kind of true. Like, I think if I'm playing a mid-range deck, I would probably rather play a card, I guess technically 2 cards that I wanted to bring up in the context of Fantomex, Marrow and Wild Child. Marrow, of course, 2/3. When it's discarded or destroyed, afflict 6 to your opponents. Wild Child 2/1 ongoing ability. When you discard a card +4, when you destroy a card +4. Doesn't stack, but it can be a 2/9, right? So you can discard and destroy a card. Obviously, those seem pretty built to support Fantomex. Marrow, of course, being a dual purpose target for both destroy and discard, and Wild Child being a sort of backup Fantomex. But when I look at Fantomex and I look at Wild Child, I gotta tell you, I think it's entirely possible that both Marrow and Wild Child are just better cards than Fantomex. And the deck comes away being like, that's actually the thing we should be doing. Like that, I think that is super, super possible. Marrow herself, I'm a little bit suspicious of, but like imagine the world where Marrow's the last card in your hand and you gambit, So you're going -6, you're doing the Fantomex thing, you're blowing something up, like that seems absolutely bonkers good. I can totally see me wanting to actually do what that is telling me to do. And like it almost feels like that's the better part of the deck compared to Fantomex. Like my final turn being a demon, a Wild Child, and a Gambit discarding Marrow. That I'm into.
All this is just leading up to my whole idea of the Gambit splash deck to be
Yeah.
not just a meme, but actually a deck that wins games on the final turn because your Gambit can just blow up whatever. Like I think the thing about Gambit blowing up whatever on the final turn is gonna be fine because you are supplementing it with a substantial amount of stats, right? Like all these cards that you play have like on average kind of nice stats. You don't really care what the Gambit blows up most of the time because it's just gonna be like reduce a bit of stats on their board. My stuff gain stats, and then it's fine, So that's what I was like envisioning. But yeah, I do agree that the Fantomex might be the worst part because the Fantomex is at the end of the day is a more expensive card. Like it's the fact that it's just more expensive than the others is just a bit it's a bit iffy for me, right? Plus, because with a more expensive card that has an activate, you kind of need to draw it at a very specific time or so. So, and like you said, Cosmic Ghost Rider. So I'm a bit like I'm not too sure what this deck is supposed to be, to be honest. But I want to see. I want to see the Gambit Splash deck do something.
My tournament was held on Saturday evening, and it was quite interesting. I kind of wanted to talk about the ways in which the new rule set that we use seemed to impact it, because we had this cube scoring system where basically the more you won by, the better off you were. I know Browde got knocked out of contention basically entirely by losing an O10. Like, just by getting 10 0'd, he just, like, it didn't matter how the rest of what he did was. And I guess, like, that's sort of the downside of a tournament like that, where it's like, he did really well in a normal sense and then just lost an O10. And it's like, in a normal world, I feel like maybe you wouldn't be punished for that. Similarly, the one real downside I noticed about this format is I think there's a real argument that this format punishes you for playing against good players. Where
Yes.
if you're playing against someone who's good, they are more likely to take more cubes from you than someone who's bad. And I don't think you should get punished more for playing against good players than a normal tournament already does. But that said, from a watchability perspective, there were tons of crazy aggressive snaps where both players were like, we're in for 8, right? And it's like round 3 or whatever of the tournament, like, or round 3 of the game, right? It felt like it was better for the viewing experience in a way I genuinely did not expect it to be. And a lot of good players came away, like, I was worried they would come away thinking what we need to be is passive. They came away thinking, no, what we need to be is aggressive. Like, we're in this situation, we have an advantage, you have to press the advantage, because if you don't press the advantage, your opponent will. I was surprised by how well it seemed to work from a viewing perspective as the caster.
It's very interesting for me because when I first heard of the rule set last week, I was thinking the opposite actually, right? We were
Yeah.
talking about the whole like if you're in a losing position, try and lose slower and grind it out so that your cubes are. I mean, the Browdy scenario where he lost because of a 0-10 was basically the scenario I was mentally trying to avoid, right? Because you don't want to go like -10 on the scoreboard in terms of tiebreakers because you lost 10 cubes to 0, 10 to 0, right? So in my opinion, I was thinking like, okay, you want to grind this out. But apparently what actually happened was that people tend to just you think they went in for more like 8 cubers and stuff like that, and then games
It
were a
would be
little
like
bit
there would be
faster.
like almost every game we saw was there was like an early 8 cuber, and then the person who lost the 8 cuber won like 4 games in a row. Like, it was a very kind of hype viewing experience, honestly. There'd be like one early 8 cuber, and then it'd be like, will there be the run back? And every time it never actually finished, but it was more than a couple games. There were very few actual O10s that we got to see on stream. It was noticeable.
Yeah. So the whole run back thing to me actually is obviously very exciting to watch on stream, right? Like you
Yeah.
see like someone is up like 8 cubes and see someone grinding back and you hope that he actually grinds it back towards like a even thing. But to me it feels very maybe because this is just a sample size of one tournament and also like because people are maybe not super familiar with the format or whatever and they didn't really care too much. I mean some people, I'm not saying everyone, but like I think
I think you'd be
optimally you're probably
surprised how much people tested for this tournament. Like,
okay,
I
okay.
was surprised how much people tested for this tournament.
Mentally, it still feels like it's more optimal to like just grind it out. Especially, it depends on your deck, right? Like if your deck is the deck that opens very consistently, rarely has bad hands, you would want to like just like grind out because you know that on average you open better. But then again, I was thinking about one thing, which is so if you go 0-8, like you lose 8 cubes in like round 1, right? For example, I think the person that's down 8 cubes would be in this like screw it position and just like YOLO. So in my mind, it's like if you're gonna be down 0-8, you're probably gonna end up being down 0-10, right? Because you would be like you would care less, in a sense, you would care less. So to me, like 0-8 and 0-10 might be the exact same thing almost. Because like once you're down 8 cubes, you're just like whatever. So I'm just thinking like there
One
were
thing
probably a
that I
lot of
did
like zero
notice
eights and
is
0-10s.
when you lost in the first round, like you got really owned in the first round. We talked about this game punishing you by giving you good matchups, right? The higher up, the better you're doing, the better the players you're playing against, right? Which makes it harder to gain cubes. We had a guy who lost the first round and then like crushed everyone else he played and almost made top 8 and would have if he did a little bit better in the final round where he was once again playing against good players. Like it was notable to me that like that was a functional way of getting through the bracket. It did occur to me.
True. I mean, but I think the guy that lost round 1 and did really well thereafter was more of the fact that the guy was generally probably more mentally resilient and just
Sure.
decided to like not throw in the towel. That's what I think.
The winner of the tournament was a man named John Doe, playing a ramp deck that I later learned was the deck that I recommended people play for the tournament. He messaged me after the tournament. He was like, thanks for the deck recommendation, because I made a video that was like, here are the decks I would play in the tournament. The first deck on the video was the ramp deck that he ended up playing. And so like this was pointed out to me in the aftermath. The only thing I have going for me is that I am now currently on a 2-tournament streak of recommending the winning deck to the person who won. I have the Cerebro deck from Worlds, and I have this deck. I have a 2-tournament winning streak going in that context. I think it's worth talking about why ramp is so damn good, though. And it's just fundamentally a deck that has exactly enough numbers to go 2 lanes bigger than most mid-range decks can get to. It is a deck that leverages board space incredibly powerfully. It is the most efficient user of board space probably in the entire game. You will very often have one deck, one location that is like the full location in your ramp deck, and it's going to have like 37 points in it because there's a chamber and a big 6 in it or something. It'll be like chamber, war machine, blink, and a Galactus. And then you have 27 points on the final turn, and those are Infinite Ebony Maw. And so they probably can't beat that lane that has all those other cards in it. So they have to figure out where your 27 points are going. And like, that's just fundamentally a powerful enough game plan that, especially when it's backed up by things like Enchantress and Cosmic Ghost Rider, which are nice, but you don't have to play to win. This deck has the ability to win 2 lanes very efficiently in terms of board space.
Yeah, I mean, so don't take this the wrong way. To me, what I'm trying to say right now is actually a positive, right? I also think one thing Ramp has going for it is it's simple good. Like, it's a simple good deck. Because given a choice, I think KM also agrees with this. Like, if you can bring the complex good deck or the simple good deck to a tournament of like 8 rounds or whatever, the simple good deck probably reduces your brain strain by a lot. And in a game like Marvel Snap, whereby it's down to so many 50-50s anyway, down to like just placing cards in the right spot at the right time, over a long period of time, mental fatigue is real. And sometimes the slightly more complex decks, like for example, you bring a Merlin Werewolf deck thing, you need to like, I mean, I'm not saying it's a difficult deck. I'm saying it's more like you need to like predict everything perfectly and all that. Whereas for like a ramp deck, right, you just look at the points. You know that is the points. You look at your counter cards, your 5s, your 5-cost tech cards, quote unquote, and you just know this works versus that deck. This is this amount of points. Final turn infinite bomb, that's plus 20. Like, you just know, right? So like, it's simple good, and I feel like it shouldn't be underestimated. Like, you don't always need to do the complex thing. Sometimes just do the simple thing, and if it works just as well as the complex thing, it saves you a bit of mental like space as well. So I just want to say what I want to say about ramp.
My theory of every card game has always been that if I think 2 decks are genuinely equal, I am always taking the easier one. Every single time. Now, sometimes I won't think 2 decks are genuinely equal, or care more about a specific matchup that'll lead to me playing the harder deck. But every time I actually think, like, fundamentally, these are about the same, I'm taking the easy one. 100% of the time. I wanted to bring up a card coming out in January. Normally we don't do this, but this is in the context of a deck that exists now. That card is Xiaolao the Undying, 5/8. For each turn, you have played a card, or played 2 or more cards. Give the card you played before Xiaolao +3 power. And that seems obviously like a quite powerful thing, right? Like, that's a really good numbers on a 5, and that's probably an important thing because it's hard to get really good numbers on a 5. We've seen that the numbers that they normally put on 5s are pretty insufficient. We saw Zombie Giant Man get like a +3 buff before he actually became a reasonable card. Like, that is sort of about how off most 5s are. Like, if you gave most 5s a +3 buff, they would be good, right? Like, that's sort of my working theory of 5s is most of them are like 3 power too low. This card, on the other hand, is not. This is like a Zombie Giant Man style 5, where it is just, this is big as hell. The reason I bring it up is right now there is a mid-range deck that really needs a good 5. And that mid-range deck is the one that is currently playing a Nihilist Sentry. It's like the Werewolf tech deck. That deck is going to get this card and is going to absolutely start slapping people around. That is my prediction. That deck is going to get this card. It's going to stop running a Nihilist garbage, and it's going to start running an actual good 5, and it's just going to start beating people up. That is my theory.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree, because I do think that deck doesn't really need to do the whole Annihilus Sentry thing to begin with. It's just more like, because that's a bit more immune to tech, right? Like, we all know that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why I think this Xiaolao is actually probably going to be a really good addition to that deck. Outside of like probably going to be a really good addition to like other decks as well. But like this one just stands out because it's actually really a lot of points. It's like, yeah, it's just a lot of points, man. And obviously adding power to the card you played previously is something that you can plan as well, right? You can plan what's going to be on your turn 4 or even 5 if you play this on 6, you know. So, and it's on reveal, so it makes the werewolf move if you want the werewolf to move, you know. So it's quite a flexible card for that deck in particular, and I'm quite excited to see like if this goes in any other shell, which I think it could, but in that werewolf deck, I'm excited to see how this plans out.
Yeah, this is my werewolf's best friend. You know what I mean? You know what other card it really likes? It really likes Prowler, right? Because Prowler lets you get to those, like, you can play on curve, but with free spells.
So
like,
werewolf's best friend is a dragon. I mean, technically Merlin and dragons kind of make sense, right?
Merlin,
So it's
dragons,
Merlin's best friend.
Yeah. They're. Don't ask me what the theme here is. I won't be able to tell you.
Merlin and dragons.
Yeah, but also Prowler.
Yeah.
And like he's just here. It's like Merlin.
He's just a guy.
No, it's that movie with Martin Lewis.
You've lost me, man. This is way further out than the Danny DeVito one, because I have no idea who Martin Lewis is.
Oh, okay. It's the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court movie that I want to say Martin Lewis did, and this went crazy in Blockbuster. I'm having a flashback to like a Blockbuster video in my childhood. And there's a movie which is an uncredited adaptation of a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court with Martin Lawrence in it. And it's called Black Knight because Martin Lawrence is black. And that's what's happening with Prowler. Like, everyone else is just doing King Arthur stuff, and he has been sent back in time with I want to say on the cover of this movie, it's Martin Lawrence with like a Philadelphia Eagles jersey on, surrounded by knights. And that's
so it's a time travel.
Yes,
movie.
It's a time travel thing. That's what's going on here. And that's the vibe. I have now established that is what's happening here. Prowler is Martin Lawrence. He's been sent back in time to King Arthur's Court where there's werewolves and Merlin and dragons. That is the vibe of this deck. I have established it. I'm positive. The two, I think, most played cards in my tournament were Shadow King and Deafening Chord. This is probably not surprising, but it is notable that in a world where everyone talks about how dead tech is, that tech is not actually dead, and that it's actually in a very healthy spot. Like, instead of being, everyone brings Shang-Chi, it's like a lot of people are bringing this, but not nearly everybody. And actually, I think it's important that reactive things are still good. I see people complaining relatively often about how they don't like how non-interactive the game is. And it's like, the interactive pieces are still the most generically playable cards in the game. I think that this is probably a good thing because it demonstrates that they have done a lot of work in making tech worse, and that work has not fundamentally altered that you can still interact with your opponent. Tech is worse, but it's still quite good and quite important.
I mean, this is Shadow King we're talking about, right? Like, I feel like Shadow King is in this spot that like it's an everything card. Like, you just play Shadow King. Chord is debatable because one thing I like about Chord is, like I said right in a few videos prior, like they're doing this whole like one cost like a spell thing to like supplement a deck. They're doing a lot of these. If you look at future releases, they're doing more of that as well. So I like this direction. I like this direction. It's like one cost cheap pieces of interactivity. That might be the direction that they're going for, and I like this a lot. With these kind of like tech-ish cards. But yeah, and to me, Shadow King is undisputed. Like it's just too good. I don't really have a. I still think Shadow King is a problem, but I don't know if or how or when they will nerf it. But
I don't know if it's a Shadow King problem so much as a how they design problem, because
because we talked about it like green
Yeah.
power is the only way
it's the
we
only
like
thing you
add
can do. Like, if you want to make a dynamic
things,
card, it
yeah.
has to be green power. If you want to make a card,
Yeah, so
that
Shadow King is doing too
scales-
much because every new good thing we are doing is
Yes.
green power.
Yeah, like, it's not his fault. It's just they don't make Morbius anymore. They don't make an ongoing card that scales with an action you take. They make Thena. And
That's true.
that means that like imagine a world where they made Xiao Lao be Claw, right? Where it's like a 5/8 with an ongoing ability. For each turn you have done this, my ongoing ability grows bigger, right? You could have done that with Xiao Lao, right? You could have done that. And I will say this. I don't know if they could have done that. I don't know if the technology exists for them to have done that. But I assume that it is at least theoretically possible. I bring this up to say, like, the more they do stuff like that, the more a card like that is an ongoing as opposed to being a green power card, the better it is for making Shadow King not be everywhere.
That's true.
Last up, I mean, this is our last episode of the year, so I guess Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all of those things to both you and our viewers. What would you say is the most broken Marvel Snap card released across the course of the year?
Man, this is so difficult because there's a lot, right? But like, if I go all the way, firstly, I want everyone in the comments to like drop their most broken card as well. That'll be interesting to see. But yeah, if we just like think about it off the top of my head, probably like something that's really okay. So basically, everything released like in the later half of the year was, to me, not as broken as when it was full power.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very easy answer personally.
Yeah, like nothing did as because firstly, Sam Wilson at its original state introduced a new like sort of mechanic to the game, right? Whereby you start the game with a thing there, and this thing there is not just a random thing. It's like a thing that enables so much other things. Like it's a shield that can shift, and it has a.
Remember when it was letting you play Cull Obsidian?
Yeah, exactly. It was a 1, right? And then so basically it was a random thing on the board that started the game with it. You started a game with a random thing on the board that literally enabled entire decks to function. Like a random Cull Obsidian in like a non-Thanos deck, for example. Like, so it was to me, Sam Wilson at its pre-nerf like state was the epitome of like they allowed a card to enable too much.
Yep.
That's for me what I think it's the most broken one of the year.
I agree entirely in terms of cards. I'll say the most broken thing was the fact that the game got banned in America is what I'll say. That's the answer I'm going to give. Okay. That's the most broken thing that happened. I think people don't even think of that as happening this year. This whole category honestly makes me want to make our entire next episode be like Marvel Snap superlatives, where it's like, what was the most broken card? What was your favorite card? Like, we just do an entire 8 cubes of like the Marvel Snap Awards, the Snappies.
Oh, we should. We should have done that.
We should do this. We can do that next. What do you mean we should have done that? We could do that next week. It would make perfect sense. They don't do the Oscars in December. They do them in like, I don't know, not
after
December.
year actually ends. And then they calculate all the data and everything.
Yes. Well, we'd like relax. We didn't miss our window to do the Snappies. I think it's okay.
Bro, there's no way we call it the Snappies.
We're calling it the Snappies.
It's a breakfast cereal. The Snappies is a breakfast cereal.
We're calling it the Snappies. It's a knockoff of Snap, Crackle, and Pop. It's fake Rice Krispies. All right. That's our show. I've been KMBest. He's been Lambie Snappies, and we will see you in the next one.
All right, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2026. Goodbye.
2026-7.